Welcome to class 1B, where we're going to be going a step further in our learning. In class 1A, we're able to learn about the measurement tape, measurements, and the parts of the body to measure in the dress form. We're also able to understand how to apply the measurement when we want to cut. So in this class, we're going to be looking at the measurements in a live model, just to reinforce our understanding of body measurements, as opposed to looking at it on a dress form. We're going to be looking at the parts on a live model. And just in case you don't have anyone to measure you, you are alone and you need to measure yourself, you'll be able to do it by yourself just by watching how it's done on the live model. All the parts that were indicated on the dress form in class 1B will also be indicated on the live model. So let's take a look at how to measure yourself on the live model. In lesson 1, I didn't take all the measurements. I just took the basic ones: bust, waist, and hip circumference, the shoulder, the back half length, the front half length, the sleeve length, and the biceps. Those are the areas we are also going to look at in this live model. I added one more measurement on the live model, which is the skirt length, and I'm going to explain more about the skirt length in the process of construction. But for now, just have it for keeps. While we are learning, I'll mention how we are going to apply the skirt length in constructing and making a garment. So let's take a look at the live body model. This is a live body model, and you can see that the bust circumference, the waist circumference, and the hip circumference have been marked. So you can see the way it looks on the side view and also on the back view. So where the tapes are marked is where your measuring tape would go through. So the bust circumference is up, the waist circumference is next. That's the side of your waist that cinches in naturally. So you take your tape and then you measure around your bust circumference. Like I told you, you make sure your tape ends on the side, and then you take note of the measurement that is there. That's how you measure your bust circumference. Then to measure your waist circumference, you make sure the tape goes around the waist in the place that cinches naturally, and you take note of the measurement that is there. Then you do the same thing for your hip circumference. You put the measuring tape. Make sure the tape is at the peak of the bum at the back, the highest point at the back. That's where you take your hip circumference and you take note of the measurements that is there. Then you measure your shoulder like we saw on the dress from left to right, from one side to the other side. It's a self measurement. So if you want to measure yourself, that's how you go about it. So then you measure your back half length. Back half length is also known as your nape to waist. From that bone at the back to your waist, that place in your back that cinches in naturally, there's that portion of your back that goes in naturally. That's your back half length. That's where you have that tape around the waist, in the middle. Yeah, that's your back half length. And then your front half length is from your side neck point, just like we saw on the dress form in class 1A. So now you can see that the tape is resting on the bust and it stops on the front at the waist. So you can see what I did there, from the side neck point on top of the bust to the waist. And then now your skirt length is from your waist all the way down to your knee or your calf, but because of this video I just want to take it from that point. Then you take your sleeve length from the short sleeve, the elbow, the 3/4, and the wrist. So you take note of all these measurements, and if you've done that, that's basically all you need to do. By now I believe we should have a grasp on body measurements and how to take them. But now we're going into the stitches that we're going to be using in the course of this training to join our pieces of fabric. Now class 1A and class 1B basically serves as a foundation for a lot of things that we're going to be doing in the course of this training. So because I understand that some of you might be sewing without a sewing machine, the first kind of stitches we will do will be done by hand. And so if you have a sewing machine and you can use a sewing machine, it's fine, all well and good. But because this course is basically for beginners, I am assuming that you don't have a sewing machine and you still want to have an understanding of how garments are made, so you'll have to be doing your stitches by hand. So I'm going to be showing you the two major type of stitches we're going to be using in the course of this training. The first one is the simple running stitch, and then the second one is the simple back stitches. The simple running stitch will just be used to fasten fabrics together or hold things together, while the simple back stitch will be a more permanent kind of stitch to hold the pieces of the cutouts, the pieces of the cutout together. So let's take a look at this. Here I have 2 pieces of fabric, and I've already drawn a line that I want to stitch on, and I'm going to be joining the 2 pieces of fabric together. I've already passed my thread into my needle, and I've already knotted the end of the thread, but then you can still create a knot while you're sewing. Let me show you that quickly. You pass it from the back, and then you pick a little portion of the fabric, and then as you pull, you gradually slow down till you're able to get a tiny loop. Put the needle into the tiny loop, and then you get your knot just to secure the edge of the stitch. Then you go in and out, and then you pull out. You go in and out, and then you pull out. You go in and out, and then you pull out. You continue like that all the way on the line. So you can do that with whatever it is that you want to join, wherever it is that you want to join. It's always good to draw a line as a beginner. It will guide you to be able to do your stitches on your line so that it's straight. So what I'm doing here is a simple running stitch. That's the way it looks at the back on the wrong side. That's a simple running stitch. But aside the simple running stitch, the other stitch we're going to be doing is the simple back stitch. Now instead of going that way, you go backwards and then stitch out. That one turns out differently. I'm going to do it again. Instead of going in at that point, you go backward and then you go in and out, and you continue like that. That's a simple back stitch. That's why it's called a back stitch. You go back. Instead of going forward, you go back and then come out in the next point. You do the same thing. Instead of going forward, you go back and then you continue. So it comes out differently on the wrong side. When you look at it, you see I went back and then you stitch. This one is a more permanent stitch, unlike the simple running stitch. This one is stronger and it lasts longer. This one looks different at the back. You can see how it looks. It's pretty different from the running stitch. It's a back stitch. So both stitches can be used to join together. You can see the difference. That's the back stitch and that's the simple running stitch. And so when you open it up, you can see that the 2 pieces of fabric have been joined together. So in the course of the training, when I ask you to join your pieces together and you're going to be sewing by hand, you can use either of the stitches, but I strongly recommend you use the back stitch because it's a more permanent stitch and it's more secure. So to end your stitch, just do something similar as what you did when you started. You pick it a bit on the wrong side and you create a loop. As soon as it's about to end, you just look for the loop, pass the needle into the loop and lock it up. You do it twice. Pass it into the loop and you pull it and you lock it up so that that stitch is well secured, and then you just pick up your scissors and then you cut off the excess thread. If you have not tried this before, I strongly recommend you practice it. Get a piece of fabric from your calico and then try doing the running stitches and the back stitches, because we're going to use it in the course of the training to join stuff together, whether it's a blouse, a skirt, a dress, especially if you don't have a sewing machine or you don't know how to use one. So the next portion is for us to look into like a miniature blouse cutting. I'm going to show you like some samples on small pieces of paper on the blouse we're going to cut in class 2A and B. So it gives us an idea of what we're going to be doing in the next phase of the class. How we're going to cut simple blouse that you can use needle and thread to sew, something that you can wear at home. And it's not just something that you can wear at home, something that if you do it in a more standard and well finished way, you can actually sell it for good money if the fabric is very good. And it's very, very simple to sew because it does not require so much stitches. It doesn't require too many stitches. Even if you don't have a sewing machine, you can easily take it to someone to stitch it together for you. So let me just show you the miniature paper version of the blouses that we're going to be learning in class 2. I have 2 rectangles here with me, 2 rectangular paper sheets, and I'm going to fold one edge at the top and fold another edge at the bottom. I'm folding the longer part. It's a rectangle. I'm going to do the same thing to the other one, given that one side is the neck and the other side is the base of the blouse. So this blouse is what I would usually call a butterfly blouse, When I put it together, I'll fold it into two so that I can get the center. If it was a fabric, I'll do the same. So I'm just using a paper, assuming that the paper is a fabric. So once I get the center point, I'll take note of that, and then I would measure a certain area and mark. So that area I'm marking is where my stitches would be. I'm going to stitch on the shoulder area, which will give me an opening for the neck, and on the body, which will give a fitting on the body. Here we have another two rectangular sheets that I'm going to fold in half. I'm going to get the center. This is another sample design. It's a miniature paper sample, so you can have an idea of what you will do with a real fabric. So we're assuming that the paper is the fabric. So I'm going to draw out a portion that represents the neck, and then that represents the body. When we are doing the main fabric, I'll give you the dimensions. I just wanted to have an idea of what we're trying to do before we get on the fabric. So the front and the back is the same. So I'm just going to cut out that portion which will stand as the neck area, and then I'll also cut out this other portion which will stand as the body of the blouse. And so you can see that it looks like a blouse already. So one stands for the front while the other stands for the back, and I'm going to run stitches from on the side to join it together. I'm going to run a stitch that goes down and run another stitch that goes down, and I'm also going to run a stitch on the shoulder to fasten it together and run a stitch there, and that way you have a blouse. So that's about everything we're going to be learning for class 1. That's class 1A and B. So class 1 is basically to just give us a solid foundation for everything we're going to be doing. So you're going to be going home with an assignment, and your assignment would be for you to take your own body measurements, use the instructions given on the dress form and also the instructions given on the live model. The reason for doing the live model is so that you can see how you can do it on your own by yourself without having any assistance. And so you'll need to submit this measurement on the platform so I can see that, okay, you have done it, because the measurement that you submit is what you're going to be using for your construction throughout the course of the training. So ensure that you follow the instructions and take the measurement and submit. When you submit, you tag me so that I can know that you have submitted, and then I can look through it. If I think you need to do it again or there's something you need to correct, I would notify you on the platform. So make sure you do that assignment, and make sure that you watch and make sure that you take all the instructions carefully. Remember the measurements: your shoulder, your back half length, bust, waist and hip circumference, your sleeve length, your front half length, and your biceps. So those are the measurements you need. Of course, there are so many other measurements you can have, but I already told you we're going to be learning more about it as we go along on this training. So just to keep things simple, just submit those measurements on the platform so that I can see it and score it. So in the next class, we're going to be working with fabrics and making simple tops and simple skirts with your hand sewing stitches.